Well, good afternoon. My name is Ivo van Roij, and I've mainly been focusing on procedural modeling, procedural content. So basically creating stuff from nothing and having that implemented in the game. And the request that we got, or as our Houdini team got, was creating mines or a mine tunnel for one of our shooter games. As you can see in this image, there's a lot of stuff going on, and throughout the slides I'll go over all the different details. So first up is the workflow. I started off with creating a low poly mesh. It's basically following along a curve, the curve that can be adjusted by both the designers and the artists to optimize their workflow. The reason why I started with low poly is because I wanted to create collision meshes as well, and you always want to have those optimized as possible. Then the second step from my tool is generating a high quality mesh, and that allows for a lot of deformation, so you really get the feel and look a little bit more of a tunnel shape. And then on the right side finally is the textured version in Unreal, which brings me to the next slide. Textures, and in this case UV space. One of the convenient things about my tool is that you can easily change UV space. And what does that mean for textures? It basically means that you can lower resolution of your images, or at least of your allocated textures, or make them higher depending on what's needed. I used an example of cobblestones. It's just a standard texture, tiling texture, which is in Unreal. And the cool thing about this tunnel is that no matter how you create it, it will always have tiling UVs. So you can mess around with it any way you want. Well, just having a tunnel on some support beams is not really that interesting. And the game teams, in their pipeline, they were creating a lot of art assets, and we got those art assets as well. And the way this works is I created this tunnel, and then on that tunnel you can just drag in meshes. So an artist creates something cool, they can immediately drag it in. There's no whole line of steps that they have to do. They're in Unreal, they have the tool, they just drag it in. And on the left side you see that there's a lot of different variations. You can have multiple ones, you can have different ones, you can have them all the same, you can have single ones singled out. And apart from that, there's a real road, and this is basically focused on mining. So it's a very small gauge width, and it gets generated along the same curve. So again, the artist or the designer only has to change one curve, and the whole terrain or the whole tunnel will update. Now, apart from just placing objects randomly, I also wanted to give the ability to change the objects in the actual tunnel. Perhaps you want to give them a little bit of offset, so it's more logical for your gameplay. So again, working together with the designers, that's something that came up. And sometimes objects have different colors or materials, so it's also really easy to just swap out the materials, as you can see. And then the final thing, which is happening now, is you can switch from low to high quality. And when it switches from low to high quality, basically it generates the deformed mesh. And the cool thing is that this object will still always be placed on top, so it's not intersecting with the terrain, and all the collision meshes get generated. On the top right you see different examples just placed along, and in the bottom right you see an example of how it works in game. And then on this slide what you can see is basically we got a request. I was working together with the designers and artists, and they were like, yeah, we're having this really cool tunnel, but we want to have entrances as well. We want to have cutout shapes. We want to be able to access the tunnels from different points. So what you can do is you can basically use a mesh or any primitive shape, and it will cut out a part of the tunnel. You can see it moving around. In the start I used a sphere. I just scale it up and just move it around a little bit. And on the left side you see a visual representation, so you can actually see the object. And on the right side it only shows you the cutout space. The same goes for the actual collision boxes and all the stuff. And that brings me to my beauty shot, which is a tunnel generated along a curve, different objects getting offset, and all materials applied. So this is how it looks when it's in development, and then finally when you're in the game this is a screenshot from there, how it looks. And that concludes my part.